A netizen shared this document, which was a notice issued in fall of 2020 by the Office of Education in Mongolia. Essentially, the notice is about replacing the current textbooks about Mongolian culture used in schools with new versions written and edited by the Chinese government. This change will be effective starting spring of 2021, and the reason that decided for the change is that the initial versions overly emphasized the Mongolian cultural identity and that there were not enough concrete details about specific historical events. In addition, they also do not fit the rhetoric that the Chinese government has been promoting. A netizen replied, "The Chinese Communist Party is carrying out a cultural genocide in Mongolia. How naive is it that some scholars are still promoting the rhetoric that the democratization of certain ethnic minority groups in China would have to rely on the democratization of the entire Chinese nation?" A netizen shared that the Chinese government possibly carried out genocide against Uyghur Muslims as well as other ethnic minorities in the northwestern region of Xinjiang, according to a recent report published on Thursday by the Bipartisan Congressional Executive Commission on China. According to the report, quote, "Disturbing new evidence has also emerged of a systematic and widespread policy of forced sterilization and birth suppression of the Uyghur and other minority populations." The report also added, quote, "These trends suggest that the Chinese government is intentionally working to destroy Uyghur and other minority families' culture and religious adherence, all of which should be considered when determining whether the Chinese government is responsible for perpetuating atrocity crimes, including genocide against Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and other Turkic and predominantly Muslim ethnic minorities in China." A netizen shared this tweet, which said, "The most effective bribe is not money nor honey trap, but instead is organs, especially organs from young people that are available at any given time, especially the high-quality organs that have already been matched according to blood and tissue types. There are too many elderly people in their 70s and 80s, as well as those Communist Party leaders, who are seeking all possible ways to reach the state of immortality." A netizen replied, "Hundreds of college students have disappeared in Wuhan. Their parents are still looking for them now. For the reporters who tried to investigate, they were arrested. Can't this tell anything about the world that the Chinese people have and are still living in under the communist regime in China?" A netizen replied, "Back in early 1991, a TV station in Japan, possibly NHK, reported on the organ harvesting crime committed by the Chinese communist regime. That was exactly around the time that Beijing was applying to host the 2000 Olympics. The video that was featured was from a court in Fuzhou. A female prisoner was about to be executed. A vehicle sent by the Fuzhou General Hospital of Nanjing Military Region parked nearby, waiting to take the organs from that female prisoner. According to those who have watched the video, after the gunshot, the female prisoner did not die immediately, but instead she was dragged over inside the vehicle. The medical professionals inside stomped on her mouth and took her organs out. This tape was initially obtained by a judge. He later shared it with a friend. Then his friend shared it with another friend. Ultimately, it was passed along to a Japanese reporter. It was said that even though this judge was not fired, he was dismissed from his post. There was no record about this incident online due to lack of access to the internet back then. The Falun Gong issue became a political issue in 1989, so perhaps this incident of live organ harvesting was never revealed. A netizen shared that, according to a doctor at the military hospital in Shenyang, he witnessed forced organ harvesting. Back in that year, he, along with other members, were commissioned to take back corpses from the execution ground in Shenyang. On their way back, they were tasked with taking out organs just in the vehicle. But nobody expected that the alleged executed prisoner did not die, and he suddenly sat up. All the people in the vehicle were scared to death. The driver lost control of the vehicle and it bumped into the median strip on the highway. Ultimately, it was this doctor who revealed this incident to the public and who once served in the military pushed this prisoner down and stomped on his throat until he finally died. In the end, the netizen also noted if that doctor with last name Zhang is still using Twitter, he should recognize it. A netizen shared that I knew about forced live organ harvesting even before the Falun Gong issue emerged. It was actually my housemate that told me about this. She once worked as a low-level cadre in the village and received some education. The incident that she shared happened in a small forest near her house. There were multiple military vehicles on site, as well as multiple soldiers. A kid living in the village back then, the child witnessed the whole process after he climbed up the tree out of curiosity. A netizen shared an official tweet from Secretary Pompeo, who said that this account will be archived in a few days and be sure to follow him on his personal handle. A netizen shared that, "I just tried to retweet this tweet by Pompeo, but it was automatically deleted by the system." Then this netizen shared a link to SafeChat. A netizen shared a series of tweets that Secretary Pompeo has shared recently regarding the Chinese Communist Party. For example, this one said, "Promise made, promise kept. We reversed decades of inaction against CCP abuses. We put complicit PRC companies on the entity list, blocked visas for human rights abusers, and levied sanctions on senior CCP officials for abuses in Xinjiang and Hong Kong." And this one said, "We have called on university boards to disclose and divest from aligned PRC companies. We now require think tanks to disclose foreign funding sources before participating in State Department projects and scrutinize visas for ties to the PLA." And this one said, "Protecting American universities from the CCP's malign influence is essential to academic freedom. We exposed Confucius Institutes for what they really are, hubs for disinformation and propaganda arms of the CCP. They are being closed fast across America." And Pompeo shared this picture, which noted that there were over 100 Confucius Institutes across the country before the State Department took action, and now there are less than 60 in existence. And this one said, "We cracked down on CCP influence operations inside our borders by ending United Front operations disguised as cultural exchanges and more. Other countries are now following suit." And this one said, "Promise made, promise kept. We labeled 15 CCP media entities and organizations as CCP state missions to make sure Americans knew they were dealing with propaganda outlets." And netizen replied, "Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping refused the outside world to separate the Chinese people from the Chinese Communist Party, while Secretary Pompeo believed that fundamentally the Chinese people are entirely different from the CCP. What do you think?" A netizen shared this picture, which shows that Pompeo's original tweet, which said the CCP broke its promise to the people of Hong Kong, but as seen the Chinese version below, Google translated the original tweet into the exact opposite meaning. The Chinese tweet said, "The CCP upheld its promise to the people of Hong Kong."
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high